My book Retablos came about almost by accident. I started writing it almost 10 years ago, and it started with writer's block. I just couldn't work on this play anymore. I couldn't find my way in. I couldn't begin it. I'd been logjammed by trying to work on 3 commissions at once and feeling that pressure. And I just said, oh hell, I just want to write something just for me. And so late one night when I was got tired of staring at the screen and tired of surfing the internet, I just said, let me write this. It's in me, something's in me, and I wrote down this account of something that had happened to me before when I was young, when I was a teenager, that seemed so surreal and so dreamlike. But it had happened. But every time I thought about it again and again, the more patinas of invention I put over them, that after a while I started wondering if maybe I had dreamt it. And so I said, I better write it down before I forget it, before I consign it to La La Land, you know? So I wrote it down and I said, okay, I dated it, I put it away in a file on my computer, and that was that. I came back to it, I cut it down from like 10 pages to 2, and I like that form even better. So as I read it again, another memory was triggered, and so I thought maybe we should write about that one. So like a month later, I wrote another one. A month after that, another one. And then slowly they started to snowball. Pretty soon, a friend of mine who runs a literary journal in San Francisco called Zizova called me and asked me if I had any work I could submit that I was working on a new play for publication in the journal. And I said, I don't have anything new. Oh, but I do have these little stories. I have like 8 or 9. And he suggested I send them to him. So I did, and he said, these are fantastic. And he published them. He published them in the journal, and he asked me to read at City Lights for the premiere of this journal, this particular winter issue. And he asked me to read at City Lights bookstore. And it was the year, it was that year that I was about to move. So I felt like, okay, now I can leave San Francisco because I have reached the mountaintop. I'm gonna read in the poetry room of City Lights bookstore, where Allen Ginsberg and Jack Kerouac and Waldman and so many other incredible poets of the Beat era have read. And not to mention Lawrence Ferlinghetti, who was the founder of that bookstore and is still there at 100 years of age. He is still running that bookstore and still, full-throated, two-fisted lefty. So anyway, it was fantastic. I read it, and someone there at the bookstore showed a tremendous interest in the book and said, you should talk to our publishing wing of City Lights. There's something here. I spoke to Elaine Katzenberger, and one thing led to another, and she said, when you're done, when you think you're done, come to me, bring these back. And I did. I set a goal of 50. I wrote 50 of those stories, I submitted them, and she said, we have a book. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I wasn't even aiming for a book. But I felt I had these really personal El Paso stories about my culture, about my upbringing, and they were all signature events in my life that seemed both profane and sacred, that seemed quotidian and yet very, very special. And so I crafted them. I realized after I had written them that they were so taut, almost like a postcard, that I thought of them as flash fiction. But I said, no, there's another form. And I remembered the retablo form. And the retablo is a kind of ex voto relic that is made by a naive artist who's commissioned by somebody who underwent an ordeal to commemorate that ordeal and the intercession of the divine as a thank you to God or that particular saint who came to help this person in a picture representing that event with a little text at the bottom. So it's half of it's picture and maybe 2/3 of it is a little crude painting. It's very naive art. And at the bottom is an inscription in which the story is related about what was happening to the person when he was crossing the street and was about to get hit by a bus, or was hit by a bus, but he prayed to the Virgin to save him, and the Virgin has saved him, and he's out of the hospital, and so he's doing this to as a thank you to the Virgen. I took my cue from that because everything was there, and they feel like postcards to God. And I said, I like that form, so I'm going to call my stories Retablos because they feel that way. And once we named the book that, then I think I understood the structure that I was working with. And it's very different from theater. There's very little dialogue in it. It's not like a play. I have long had this hankering to write stories, to write a novel, to work in prose, another form other than plays, to write poetry. And I thought I could get all of it out in these stories. They're partly true, but there's also, like I mentioned earlier, a patina of invention over each of these stories. So they're very deeply personal to me.